All right, what is up, everybody? Brandon here, back for another weekly Wednesday live Q&A. It is episode number 8 for those of you who are rewatching this on YouTube. This is always live on Facebook at 7 o'clock Central Time. So basically what I've been doing for the past, obviously, 2 months now, actually I've been doing this, is putting out a status on my Facebook page asking people to ask me whatever kind of questions that they want about fitness, about bodybuilding, about nutrition, and then I take questions during the day and I answer them during this live video. Also, I will take questions during the live video itself, but I will get to those people that asked me the questions already. So we'll start with those, the ones that were asked, and of course everyone will be rolling here, but we always get started at 7 o'clock sharp. So Julie asked, and Julie's always asking me questions. Hey Lydia. She said, advice on assessing scale fluctuations both off-season and while dieting, while taking into account female hormones, monthly cycles, aka did I get fat or is it just my period? Julie, that was a great question. And there was a couple other ones in there that were regarding regarding about the same thing, so I'll cover that. First, we'll talk about just scale fluctuations as a whole, and then we'll talk about the female fluctuations per the month. So yes, absolutely, the scale does tend to fluctuate from day to day, no matter if we eat the same amount of food, if we drink the same amount of water. Sometimes our stress, what we worked out, and like the amount of sodium, all affect what we truly weigh the next day. So there is going to be some scale fluctuation. Now, what I've been doing for some of my clients, at least, what I'm doing for myself, those people that are not bothered by it, I actually have them weigh themselves daily. Now, some people, that may have actually a negative effect and may cause them to stress a little bit more. But what I found with the daily weigh-in is that you actually get a much better picture of what's going on with your weight throughout the week, throughout the month. But there also could be a negative side effect to that. Sometimes people might overstress for having to stand on the scale that much. So anyway, that's one way to overcount the scale fluctuation. Obviously, you want to see a trend, either maintaining, gaining, or in a slight deficit over the course of the month. Now, to get to the female hormones in the monthly cycle. So obviously, when ladies get on their period, they tend to hold a little bit more water. Their weight tends to get up. What I've done in the past is basically during that week, those 7 to 9 days, I don't really like to make any changes because I know that more often than not, it's just water weight. It's just a little bit of bloat that's going on, and it's not fat. So, obviously, if your weight jumps up 2 to 3 pounds overnight and you didn't overeat on your macros, it's not fat gain. It's just a little bit of excess water weight coming with that. So the key thing is to not panic. And I feel like at least my clients I've done a good enough job explaining to them, not to worry, let's just hold steady and wait till next week. And more often than not, that weight comes down and then some the following week. So for all you ladies out there, just be in mind, especially those of you who are dieting or, have gone through diets before, when your weight does go up and it's your time of the month, don't freak out because that weight will come back down. Don't make any unnecessary changes during that time span. At least if you're not on a hard deadline. Obviously, if you're on a hard deadline, if there's a contest coming up that you need to get ready for, then that's a tough decision that you have to make, whether to make cuts or not. But I would honestly recommend just holding steady and see what happens the following week. Bronwyn asked, kind of jumping off of Julie's question, she said, how to handle female hormones impacting the gym. 1 week, I'm as strong as Hercules, and the next week, I don't feel as strong, can barely do the same reps with the same weight. Should females train differently than males? So, Brian, that was a very good question. Now, I get where she's coming from because obviously, as your hormones change, you're going to feel stronger some days. And men, we have it a little bit easier. Our hormones are very steady throughout the course of the week. They might fluctuate, day to day, but for the most part, we are very steady. So our training happens to be the same for ladies. It's going to be a little bit different. Now, what to focus on is not to get discouraged when we're in the gym and we know, week to week, sometimes our strength is just not going to be there. Once again, just like we were talking about the daily weigh-ins, we want to look and keep a journal at how our strength has been going over the course of the month, over the course of a couple months. If we've noticed that our strength is going up and up and up and up over the course of, let's say, 3 to 6 months, and sure, we're going to have a few bad workouts in there. We're going to have days where our strength is just not there. I have that during contest prep where my strength's just not there. So what we do is we just don't focus on those bad days, and we focus on the good days. We try to make as much progress as we can, knowing that we are going to get some kind of bad days along the way. Yep, Catherine just said, checking your weight daily is extremely important. 2-3 pounds of weight gain could be a major health issue. For example, heart failure. I'm not speaking for having stage 4. Okay. Heart transplant. Just saying. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're having huge weight fluctuations, there could be some health issues going on. But you gotta also incorporate. Did I eat a lot of sodium? Did I eat super duper late at night and nothing digested? So those are things that you also have to take into with weight gain, especially with females. Obviously, if you start your period, you're probably going to gain some weight in the first couple of days. So Bronwyn, anyway, getting back to that, I would just say, roll with the punches and try not to focus on those days where you feel weak. Don't get discouraged, and a few days later, your strength will be back up. Leah asked a good question. How do you know when you need to up your weights or to up your reps when lifting? Sometimes I find it difficult to know when to push myself and add an extra 10 pounds when deadlifting, squatting, or even just bicep curls. So that's a really good question, and some movements, first of all, are going to be harder to progress on than others. So let's say you mentioned the squat and the deadlift. Adding 5 to 10 pounds on there is probably doable as long as you're keeping form on point. Now, on a dumbbell bicep curl, you're going to end up reaching a point where you're not going to be able to add 5 to 10 pounds on a lift just because of that specific movement. So when to add, in my opinion, this is what I always try to tell people, is if you're hitting all your sets with all your reps, so both those two of the same weight, then next week when you come around, add 5 pounds to it if you can, add 10 pounds if it's a larger movement, and then go from there. And then once again, if you hit every single set, every single rep, then move it up. If you don't get all the reps, then don't move it up for a couple weeks. So some movements you'll be able to progress quicker than others, and some movements you're going to be able to stagnate, or you're going to stagnate. So for example, my lateral raises, I can do about 45 pounds if I'm trying to keep good form for about 10 to 12 reps. Years ago, I could probably do about 45 pounds for 10 to 12 reps, keeping the form the same. So that movement has not progressed, because it's just a hard movement. Now, my deadlift, my squat, bigger movements, barbell rows, lat pull downs, once again, those are going to be able to jump up a little bit. But once again, my strength has pretty much been more or less the same over the course of my bodybuilding career. I mean, I've deadlifted 500 pounds. Right now, I can't currently deadlift 500 pounds. I've squatted 405 pounds. Right now, I'm definitely not squatting 405 pounds. But what's going on is I've been getting progressively larger over time. So don't focus so much on strength as our main driving factor, but focus on how our body's looking over the course of time. If I judge my progress alone about how my lateral raises have come along or how my lat pull down has come along, really there's no change in those movements, just because I've probably lat pulled down 200 pounds now, and back in the day I could probably lat pull down 200 pounds. But I just put up a picture on Instagram of like a 3-year progress just yesterday. And although I haven't feel like I've gotten a lot larger, like looking at those two pictures, I'm like, damn, I have gotten a lot bigger. But if I only based it off of my weightlifting ability, if I base it off of my weightlifting ability, honestly, I'm probably a little bit weaker right now because I don't focus on the big 3 lifts anymore. I do a lot more accessory work, but it's worked for me, and that's what's changed my physique the most. All right, Matt had a couple questions like he always does. Matt, I don't know if you're with us right now. He said he might have to work, but let's see what Matt had to say. Matt said, on a similar note, is it better to sacrifice an extra rep weight to maintain shorter rest periods, 30 seconds, or would a longer rest period, 1 to 2 minutes, be better to maximize volume? I personally enjoy 30 to 45 second rest periods, but I'm obviously sacrificing some volume to do so, and was running has this a negative effect on my growth? Hey Karen, thanks for tuning in as always. So Matt, that's a good question. I usually recommend 45 seconds to a minute when we're doing hypertrophy work. If we're doing any kind of heavier work, if we're squatting 1 to 5, 1 to 6, or deadlifting or whatever we're doing, I'd recommend about 2 minutes. But once again, that's going to be very on a person-to-person basis, just because some people can recover a little bit better. Myself, when back in the day when I was like really trying to deadlift heavy, I would take 3-4 minutes in between sets. Was that necessarily optimal for muscle growth? No. Was it optimized for performance? Yes. So are you losing? Are you losing out on taking very short rest periods? I would say that you might be losing out a little bit, and I was going to get to this one a little bit later because Holly asked it, but I'll kind of touch on it now and touch on it again at the end. If you are pressed for time, then I would say yes, definitely increase your pace. But what we're trying to do is go to the gym where we have enough time where we don't have to rush through. So I would say focus on that first, and then yes, if we do have to cut our rest time down, you could get away with 30 to 45 seconds. Just incorporate that, on a hypertrophy day, something where you're doing 15 to 25 reps, and that way it won't really affect your performance as much. I did see Blaine made a comment here. So he said, I always tell clients when strength matters at the end of the day, we're physique athletes, not power lifters. Yep. So you can't take the bench, squat, and deadlift platform on stage. No, you definitely can't, Blaine. And thank goodness, because if we did take that on stage, I would probably get dead last because my 3 lifts are not very good. I actually do not even bench press, believe it or not. Matt asked another great question. And this one threw me off a little bit because it was a little bit more serious. It was a little bit more directed at my own business. So Matt said, what is my vision / mission for Team Iron Management, aka where do you see yourself and your team in 5 to 10 years, etc. So basically, what I've been doing over the course, basically since 2015, is I've slowly been building my business. I've been coaching clients, year after year, and what I've seen is just a slow, steady increase of the quality of clients and the number of clients that I've been working with. I'm not going to name numbers of how many people I'm working with because that really doesn't matter. I look at more or less the quality of the client, and that's something that I never want to sacrifice. So to be brief, Matt, really what the game plan is for 5-10 years from now is basically I want to keep doing what I've been doing, putting my athletes first. I think everybody that works with me knows that I do put my athletes first. I'm always prompt to respond. I never want to compromise that. You're not going to see me working with 100 plus clients ever, no matter where I get, because I feel like people who have that many clients just can't put the individualized attention that they need for their clients. So the goal, honestly, is to keep things under control. Definitely under 100 people at all time. Not even that, if I had to say. I would rather just keep it maybe around 50 to 60, 75 max. Because I think that's the most I could handle with keeping quality. As far as expectations, I really don't have any personal expectations. Obviously, I want to see continuous growth. I think more and more people are going to catch on. Obviously, with me going through contest prep right now, I think people are going to learn a little bit more from me firsthand and what I have to offer. And not that I'm going to market myself using this contest prep because I've proved that I could grow my business without going through a contest prep. So basically, it's just going to be keep doing what I'm doing, putting out quality information, actually being real. I'm not going to be one of these fake Instagram guys that are going to be selling quick programs, clickbait, lose 15 pounds fast, join my 1 month, trial on Instagram, join my group. Like, I'm not going to be doing any of that. It is going to be a lot more work. But that's what I signed up for. So I'm never going to compromise my work ethic. I'm never going to compromise what I want to do as far as my business. I knew that it was going to be a long road ahead because it is a very crowded marketplace. I mean, it's not easy to stake a claim in. And I feel like, I've slowly worked up my way within the ranks. And, I'm not saying that I'm at the top. I'm saying that I'm working my way up there. But the goal, I guess, in 5 to 10 years would be to be one of the big names, in the contest prep coaching industry within natural bodybuilding. I feel like my name is getting out there more. But, time will tell what that happens. And Matt said, 30-day meal plans, bro. No, definitely not, Matt. I know that you're not a fan of those either. Alrighty. Holly did ask a couple of good questions here, so I'm going to get to those. And, of course, if anyone has any other questions, please feel free to go ahead and ask them. Holly asked how to cope with feeling like a bloated toad every day while meeting the daily fiber goals. Is vein of fiber something that is acceptable to eat? So I do, and Holly just started working with me, and I do put somebody on a recommended fiber intake a day. And basically what I'm getting at from a recommended fiber intake is I want people eating whole food sources. I don't want them just eating sugary foods for their carbs, so I do put them on a recommended fiber intake. And really, I mean, it's going to be very individualized once again. And I ask everybody, do they have a rough estimate of the fiber that they're intaking? If somebody such as Holly was intaking a little bit lower, we start on the low end and I give a low range. So like for women, I think I have her on right now like 25 to 35 grams of fiber per day. That's, of course, intaking the amount of carbs that she's taking. She's not eating a ton of carbs, so we don't necessarily need to have a ton of fiber in there, but we want to make sure that there's some just to keep her sustained. So what would I recommend who's, first of all, how to get in enough fiber. Now, there's different ways we can get in our fiber, of course. There's things like, high fiber wraps. I eat those all the time, like with burritos or whatever. So that's a good source. Of course, oatmeal, there's even high fiber oatmeal. I've eaten that like during a contest prep just to get my numbers up. Of course, fruits and vegetables have a decent amount of fiber in there. Beans, I mean, I eat a decent amount of those too. It's just watching the amount and trying to stabilize the amount. So, Holly, if you are feeling bloated, maybe we actually do need to bring down your fiber intake just to normalize you a little bit. So that's what it sounds like to me, but we'll have to watch you closely. For everybody else who does feel bloated, now, you could have a positive, a negative effect, or a no effect depending on how much fiber you're intaking. So once again, if you're eating a ton of fiber, it could actually back you up. If you're not eating enough fiber, once again, you might not have a bowel movement. There's a fine line where you need to be within a rough range in order for you to be sustained and have normal bowel movements. So I would, do a rough range of about 10 grams and see where you feel most comfortable. If you, are on one end or the other, then, we need to adjust those 5 to 10 grams at a time. Would I recommend taking a fiber supplement? Not necessarily, because once again, I do like to see most of the food that has fiber, you actually eat it and not just take a supplement. Obviously, if we're really struggling, yes, we could add in a supplement. Let's see, another one here. What did, oh, thanks, Leah. Thanks for the kind words. All right. Let's see here. Marie said, macros on a rest day. Do you recommend altering or keeping the same as training days? So that is a good one. And what I've done basically for my coaching career is I've just kept everything the same from a training day to a non-training day. Now I do include refeed days, at least once per week, basically for people that are in contest prep. I really don't use them during off seasons too much, but I do like to keep the macros the same on a rest day, really just to help recuperate. And I feel like although you're technically not burning off as much energy, if you are in a big deficit, if you are in a big deficit, it could actually help you just recover a little bit. So that's the main thing that I like to keep my macros the same on a rest day. And by that, you're just going to have a little bit of extra glycogen, storage, and you'll probably burn that off the next day. All right. Holly did ask another question here. And this one's a little bit long, so bear with me. Holly asks, what is the best time of the day to take recommended supplements that are on the list, such as like BCAAs? Do you drink the recommended amount of water with that, like that the bottle says? That's a ton of water to be mixed according to directions. Yeah, absolutely. Schedule allows. There's only certain times of the day, 1 hour for so there's multiple questions here. Let's cover the first one that Holly asked about recommended supplements, and is there a time to take certain supplements during the day. I like to personally start off my day with my multivitamin and with half of my joint support. So I take my multi and core flex at the beginning of the day just because they are pills. I take those, right off the bat. Up next, obviously I do try to time out my pre-workout shake. I think that is very important. So yeah, I take that about, 20 minutes before I work out. If I'm on any test boosting products, I will take those because sometimes they are recommended. For instance, core test. If you're taking it while training, you take it like 20 minutes pre-workout. So I take that along with my pre-workout shake. BCAAs, I also take pre-workout. And then I sip on BCAAs during. What Holly is getting at is, technically, I do drink a ton of water with my shakes. I do have 3 shakes. I have a pre-workout shake, an intra-workout shake, and a post-workout shake. And that is a lot of water. I mean, that could easily be, 40 to 60 ounces of water in a very short amount of time. And I end up do go to the bathroom quite a bit after I work out just because of all that water that I'm pushing. But obviously, when I am working out, I want to make sure that I am hydrated to the fullest of my abilities to help with performance and just make sure that everything is optimized. Now, what she's getting at is, do I always recommend using the same amount of water that the bottle says to use? No, you don't have to. It's just from a mixability standpoint. That's why they recommend using a certain amount of water. Just sometimes because it could be a little bit chunky, it could be a little bit gritty, depending on if you don't mix it with enough water. So I would say more often than not, stick with the recommended 8 to 10 ounces of water for your BCAAs and pre-workout. I feel like that's not a ton of water, especially when you put it in a glass. Or a shaker cup. It's really not too much to ask. Now, her next question is, if the schedule only allows a certain amount of time, for example, 1 hour in the entire workout, is it more important to hit the sets if the plan of sets of the plan, or miss a couple of exercises if time runs out? Because some days she's doing a little bit, maybe the program that she's on, she's currently working with me, maybe it's a little bit too much. So Holly, we might actually have to dial back your program a little bit, and that's the thing that's going to be individualized per person. Holly only has an hour to work out during her lunch break, so it was kind of tough for me to put together a program where she could only work out for an hour, because obviously she's a competitor. We still need to have her doing quality workouts. So we might actually need to dial back her total working sets and focus on, more performing the movement correctly rather than trying to get a ton of sets in. So that's one thing that we might do. But let's say we're in a rush and we really do need to get out of the gym. Would I rather see you get everything in or skip a few exercises? And that's a tough question to ask. Honestly, there's no legitimate answer. What I would say is just make sure that the exercises that we are doing, let's say you only have time to do 3 back exercises. That's when you choose the 3 back exercises that you feel the absolute best, and you perform those to your maximum potential. And then, let's say you move on and you're training bis and you only have time for 2 bicep exercises. And you take the 2 bicep exercises that, once again, you feel your absolute best. And that way, you're going to get, the best bang for your buck when you're choosing the 2 movements. So once again, with Holly's specific case, since she only has an hour to do it, I, as a coach, I probably need to dial back on her program just to make sure, that she can perform her workout properly and not have to rush through, because when we start to rush, that's when we're not using proper mind-muscle connection, and that's when we're also at a risk for injury. She's coming off of a surgery, so we don't want to put her back in a place. We want to make sure that it is a nice, easy road to recovery. So yeah, that's something that we could do. Is to dial back and just to focus on doing it correctly. All right, Lydia asked, and this is about the last question. We might keep this one a little bit short. How important is it to get fruit in your diet and contest prep? I know a lot of people, myself included, opt to kick them out first when the carbs start to drop, as sometimes they don't keep you sustained very long. Lydia, great question. And that's, I could see why you would do that, and I've done that in the past. Because fruit, it does tend to be a little bit higher in sugar. Depending on what you're eating, you tend to burn through it a little bit quicker. What I do when I start prep, and I'm obviously currently in prep, right now my carbs are at a point where I don't need to worry about that. I still try to get in, 2 to 3 servings of fruit a day and 3 to 4 servings of vegetables. I mean, that's just something that I really wanted to change during this contest prep, because last prep, although the end result worked out well for me, I got the physique that I wanted. I felt like I just didn't eat as healthy as I could. Obviously, the main thing that I focus on is macros, but this time I'm focusing on macros and micros. I'm not necessarily keeping track of it legitimately, but I am keeping in mind how many servings I'm taking. So one thing to do is, maybe at certain times of the day, let's say like for breakfast. Today, I always make sure I have some kind of fruit with breakfast, just to keep it simple. And I know that it just kind of reminds me, just like I take my certain supplements when I wake up, I know I'm having a piece of fruit when I wake up. I typically have my vegetables more in the afternoon and evening, and then sometimes, again, fruit before I go to bed. What you could do is find fruit that just doesn't have a ton of carbs in it. Now, there's some fruit that's a little bit more dense than others. Let's say right now I'm looking at a banana right on my table. This banana, judging off the size, could easily have 30 grams of carbohydrates in it. Now, once again, on my table, this is what I eat every single day. It's a small clementine, only has 10 grams of carbs for it. It's still a serving of fruit, so I mean, you don't necessarily need to eat 30 grams worth of carbohydrates in order to get the benefit of the vitamins and minerals coming from an individual fruit. I eat a lot of strawberries when I'm in prep too, when they're in season. Right now it's winter, they're technically not in season. So I go for those, as a good go-to in the morning or for a snack. They're a little bit lower in carbs. And then, of course, any vegetable is going to be a little bit lower in carbs in general. Still, some have more than others. But, yeah, I could definitely see your point on the satiating factor. Vegetables tend to be obviously a little bit starchier. They take a little bit longer to break down. So I would recommend still trying to get in, at least 1 to 2 servings of fruit, just once again to fill those gaps in our diet. If we are not getting in the recommended vitamins and minerals in our other food, the worst thing to do is just cut out whole food groups in general. I've said that before, and I'll say it again. That's the worst thing we could probably do, because that's where we start to get vitamin and mineral deficiencies, and that it does get tough. When you get down to the very nitty gritty of prep and you're on lower macros, and the choices are very limited. So yeah, when the rubber meets the road, if you got 50 grams of carbs to eat, of a day, I would not recommend eating one of these for 10 grams of carbs, because you could spend your carbs a lot smarter. But that's going to be per the individual, and obviously, you still could eat it, but it's probably not the best thing to eat when your carbs are that low. So guys, I think that's going to be it for the day. I didn't see any more questions roll in. This one is just going to be about 30 minutes. So once again, it's every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central Time. This is going to be live on my Facebook page. I'll see you guys next week. Enjoy your night.